Well, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everyone had a good holiday. Fun with friends and family. Got lots of cool presents. Hope you guys are going to have great plans for the coming year. I've got a lot of plans coming up for the new year, especially with Warhammer. Got quite a few Christmas presents, made a few purchases, and really want to get focused on getting the models that I have painted. The main focus of this video today, that I want to kick off the season with, is about my biggest Christmas present of the year. This is from my brother, and you all recognize it's the Wraithknight. This was the last addition to my Eldar army that I really need at the moment. There's a few other things that I want, but I definitely needed him. So I'll kind of go over unboxing him. I'm going to go over a little bit of the modeling that I did to him, and I really wanted to go over magnetizing because there's not a lot of videos out there on people who have magnetized him. So I'll start with the modeling part. As far as a model overall goes, this guy was super easy to put together. Everything, all the joints in the shoulders, they're ball and socket, so it gives you a lot of free range motion back and forth on them. The legs at the hip joint and at the knee, I've done some modeling too, but if you didn't want to model it, it has pins and sockets that you just pretty much just plug everything in with a little bit of glue and it'll hold itself together. The biggest challenge for this guy was the pose that I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to have a pretty aggressive forward pose with him, like his, kind of like his jetpacks are in full blaze and he's in the middle of a leap. So as far as the modeling goes, it took, what I had to do is, let's see if we can get up here. The knee joint here typically has a small pin and a socket in the upper leg and a pin and a socket in the bottom leg. All I had to do was cut the two pins off, and then this allowed the upper and the lower leg actually to swing freely inside each other, so it was truly like a ball and socket that I've turned those into. This leg was obviously the easiest because it was straight, but as the other leg, a little bit more difficult. I've cut those pins again, but it took a little bit more modeling up here in the hip joint to get the angle right for the leap. So the hip joint actually has a very large square piece peg that fits into the lower part of the torso there, and I had to cut it off with a utility knife, round it off, and then allowed it to fit in there. The only problem I ran into was how this little actuator arm that controls that goes from the lower body to the leg kind of got in the way a little bit. So I actually had to trim some of the bottom part of that torso just to give that bar enough room to set it forward so I could glue that in place. And the same with this one, I had to shave it so that I could pull the leg back and get the severe angle that I wanted. It was pretty easy from there. Once I got the legs put together, really all I had to do was glue the foot to the base where I wanted it, and then I glued the leg together separate from the torso. I glued this whole thing into place, so he was just a leg on the base, and I loosely put the torso on the main body before I glued it together, and that gave me the positioning I needed, and then I was able to position this leg where I wanted it. The arms, they were all ball and socket, so they were very easy to put together, and the head was just basically looking at the angle of the model where he would be looking, and then playing around with the angle of the torso so that it looked more fluid and natural, as if he's lunging forward. So when, a tip when you're modeling something like this, you want to think realistically too. So I looked at some pictures of people running and I looked at a couple of pictures of people in the Olympics and college that were doing the long jump, and looked how their body was proportioned right before they leapt, where they planted their feet, and then of course the runners were the best example. So, you know, they had your torso, you know, rocks from side to side as you run to compensate for the lack of support right here. I also looked at pictures of things that were being thrust forward, and what I noticed is it wasn't a total run motion as you would suspect. So the leg wasn't as severe, it wasn't forward as much. So when you're running, your leg would be swept farther forward, ready for you to plant. Whereas if you know that you're going to be either falling or something is going to be supporting you when you jump, you actually tend to get lazy on that leg opposite your plant one. So I kept that leg kind of lazy there. Lots of support on this one because this is the last thing that's going to leave the ground before the jetpacks really kick in and lift him off the ground. Ultimately, I think I did pretty good. It was not an extensive model, but all the subtle things made it really nice. The next thing I had to do was obviously to magnetize it. There were not a lot of videos out on people magnetizing these, and I found that with the magnets that I had, some of the techniques just didn't work. So I had to modify them a little bit. Most of them were really easy. A couple of them were a little difficult, but I'll go over them one at a time. So let's start with the shoulder pads. They were by far the easiest. I did these first on this Wraith Lord to get his weapons so that they interchanged, and it was actually pretty easy from there. So all you need to do with these is obviously glue them in place, but all you're going to do is you drill out a small hole, and then you just place your magnet right there in the center of that shoulder pad, and you're good to go. Now what I would do after this is I'm actually going to go in with some liquid green stuff and then probably some regular green stuff and fill that in, cap it off, and it'll look smooth and less rough looking when it's totally done. The weapons were pretty much the same thing. They were very easy to do. So they have a small oval piece that you can kind of just see at the bottom there, and all I've done is taken a utility knife and actually cut 2 notches just the size of my magnet and cut it all the way down to the base. Get the best view there. Cut it all the way down to the base so that magnet just fit right in and was almost flush with that plastic. That allows the gun to sit pretty flush. For the front of the guns, I had some large flat magnets that actually were the perfect size for the opening there. The guns themselves, this is the scatter laser, the magnet is, again, it was the perfect size for the end of that, and simply just put them on there. So what I liked about this is a lot of people try and integrate the magnets into the bodies or into the guns, and that gets kind of tricky, especially with Eldar, because everything is so small that you've got to go really tiny magnets, and sometimes with those tinier magnets they just don't have the grab that the larger ones do. So instead of doing that, I've actually tried to integrate the magnets so that they look like they're part of the gun. So when this is all painted, it's going to look totally natural, rather than trying to countersink them and fighting the plastic and the modeling. I did do all of the other weapons as well. So you've got the shuriken cannon, which I think is really one of the coolest looking versions of the guns. And we even have the star cannon. Now the star cannon was a little bit smaller, so I had to use those smaller magnets on there, but it still works out in the end. It looks pretty good effect. It stays on there. And then they just simply attach right there to the Wraith Lord, or the Wraithknight. And there you have it. And it's nice because you've got a little bit of play, so if you're shooting at something different directions, you can kind of aim it. I like to tilt them kind of facing the direction of the Wraith Lord, like Wraithknight, like he's looking at his target there. So the second part that I had to magnetize were obviously the guns, which are either the two heavy Wraith cannons, or the shield and the sun cannon, or the shield and the sword. The sword was actually really easy. So what I found was that the arm on this side, when you put it together, it's just a ball and socket, so the end of the arm just fits in there. It's actually tight enough that you can just pop it in there, and it actually holds the sword in place on its own. So there were no magnets or anything involved in that one, which made it really easy. The shield was pretty easy as well. I started with the magnet on the underside. So we put a magnet just on the main part where this would attach to the arm. And then on the arm itself, I have the large magnet here. And you'll notice a smaller magnet here, and I'll tell you about that one here in a second. So the shield, just pop it on right like that. And then there's a second part to this shield, and it's actually three-dimensional, so it actually fits in that hole right underneath his arm there. And I tried to figure out how I was going to get that to keep the 3D look without having to glue this third piece to the main body of the shield. So what I've done is you can't see inside there, but I've got another magnet planted right inside there, kind of up on the top of the arm. And then I've mounted the mounting piece onto the shield, and I put a magnet right on the end. So what that does is, once I put that in, that magnet that's up here in the arm holds that second piece in place, and I keep that kind of three-dimensional look without having to glue it together. So that's pretty much one of the first loadouts right there with the sword and the shield. Like I said, pretty simple. So the second alternative to this that you could do is the sun cannon, and I'll explain that second smaller magnet. So this is the main body of the gun with the sun cannon on it, and as you can see, I've got my larger magnet here, and on this arm I've got the same kind of setup. So we've got a large magnet and then the smaller one. So what happened is this large magnet was actually strong enough to keep the gun on there and hold it to the model. But what was happening is it was heavy enough when the sun cannon or the other guns were on there that it was wanting to lean, so it was wanting to fall forward. So this smaller magnet, all it does is when that gun wants to fall forward, it catches that secondary magnet and it doesn't allow it to fall down. So then it simply just, oh, I've got the wrong attachment on there. Hang on. So these are going to be magnetized later, but right now they just have the standard. This is a square socket. It fits right into the end of the gun there. For right now it works pretty well. So then that just hits right there. And you have your second variant with the sun cannon and the shield. So obviously the third variant is the two heavy D cannons. So the first one there. Can take all this off. And put our other gun on there. And there you have it. That would be the third and final loadout. So as far as painting goes, the only thing I do notice about this guy before painting is Some of the pieces really do need some green stuff work. Some of the joints didn't go together quite well here on the arms. I didn't get them glued together just right. So they'll need some green stuff and a little bit of smoothing. That gets into some more advanced modeling, which if you're not comfortable doing it, you absolutely don't have to, but it's nice to finish that off and make it look smooth. As far as paint scheme goes, I'm going to keep it the same. All my Wraith and my Sam Han army are going to have this same similar paint scheme. So these are the Wraith Guard. They incorporate the red and the black with some silver and white helmets with lots of gems on them. And then the Wraith Lord as well. You can see, just real basic colors. Black and red and white, pretty standard, and then bright green and blue gems to really set them apart. Lots of gold trim over them, just as an accent color. And what I'm going to do is, as I kind of start to get this guy finished, I'll start posting up some videos on how I've done on him, where I've gotten as far as progress. And if you guys have any questions about the modeling, any questions about the magnets or the sizes I use, just feel free to comment down at the bottom. If there's anything in particular you'd like to see while I'm going through the painting, feel free to comment as well. Thanks for listening, guys. I really have some subscribers, so down there at the bottom, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to have lots of videos coming up here soon in the new year. Hopefully get some battle reports up, and hopefully get a couple painting tutorials and stuff like that. So have a good year.